name's Marcia, and I'm part of Life in Your Church. And in normal times, I go to Marley Hill. So today, we're going to look at the Book of Ecclesiastes. You know, in 2021, this book feels more relevant than ever. We've all been living through the coronavirus pandemic for more than a year now, and although there are signs of it coming to an end, many of us are weary and struggling and really tired. We're wondering just what life is all about. And at times we may feel it's rather pointless and meaningless. And this is where the Book of Ecclesiastes seems to be even more poignant and relevant than ever. In order to understand Ecclesiastes, we need to look at it with all of the wisdom books, that is, Proverbs and Job as well. You kind of think of it as a three-piece jigsaw, and you need all the pieces to get the full picture. When we put all the pieces together, we get a whole picture, and together the book will give us wisdom to live our lives by. Proverbs, well, that gives us advice on how to live righteously, and as a result, reign in life. Job, that tackles the problem of suffering, and it tells the story of a man who is both good and full of faith, and tells how he had terrible calamities in his life and huge loss. Ecclesiastes is a book about humanity. It's about human nature. It shows us how we can try almost anything to find meaning in life, and how we will look anywhere at everything and in every way before we think we'll look towards God. So I'd love to say the next bit is my idea, because I think it's such a good one. But in fact, I've borrowed it from Alex Repman. Alex is the person who wrote the original talk that this one is based on, so I have a big thank you for him. He said that he likes to think of the wisdom books as people. And he asked the question, so what kind of people do you think they'd be? I thought, let's give that a go. Proverbs. Proverbs is a magnificent woman. Let's call her Lady Wisdom. She's intelligent, full of integrity. She has always done what's right, and she's done really well for herself. However, she's not trampled on or exploited anyone else on her way. In fact, the opposite's true. She has gone out of her way to support those who are less fortunate than herself. She is definitely a person you would do business with, because she's so full of integrity, you would feel you were in safe hands. She's trustworthy, and you would look to her for advice and know that her answer would be considerate, considered, truthful, and wise. She wouldn't tell you what you want to hear, but she would tell you what you need to hear, and her wisdom is timeless. Now, Job. Job is an old man with great life experience. He has experienced many, many things in life, including being rich and incredibly comfortable, surrounded by his family, with vast wealth and everything he could ask for, and then tragically losing everything and having nothing. At the moment, I'm reading a book called The Beekeeper of Aleppo, and it's a story about refugees fleeing from their homes, often facing terrible, terrible danger and personal loss. These people have lost children, spouses, friends, their homes, their livelihoods, and they flee from their country barely alive and often damaged from the trauma that they've experienced. They are suffering greatly. I think that Job, although he wasn't a refugee, would understand and identify with them. He would know about their loss, and he would be the sort of person who would be able to get alongside them, probably without words, and just show them that he understood what they were going through. He would know what it is to have great loss in his life, because he has lost nearly everything and everyone he cares about. He has had bad health, and he has hit rock bottom, and to top all that off, he's been wrongly accused by his dearest friends. But for all of that, Job is a man of great faith, and even though he doesn't know why he suffered, he still has his faith in God intact. And as a result, he has come out stronger from his tribulations. His experiences have left him, no, his experiences could have left him bitter and mean. But actually, Job is joyful and forgiving. He has a twinkle in his eye and a ready smile for everyone he meets. In fact, he's the sort of person that you would definitely want to be your granddad. So in contrast, Ecclesiastes is middle-aged, well-educated, culture vultures. They are hungry for new experiences, new ideas, new gadgets. They have the latest iPhone, and they truly believe that Apple computers are far better than anything else. They can be good fun. They can be good fun. They can be the life and soul of a party. But they're also prone to moments of extreme depression, and they ask questions like, what's it all for, and why am I here? They're jaded and disillusioned and cynical, but they're also urbane, well-travelled, well-connected, and they have good taste. Their homes are beautiful, and they have collected some wonderful pieces of artifacts from their travels. They've seen it all, they've been there, and they've got the t-shirt. They feel adrift and often feel purposeless, and despite having achieved a lot in their lives, they're disappointed with life. Even so, they have moments of brilliant insight. And so they're what you might call conflicted, and although I don't like to admit it, I can see little bits of myself in them. So, the Book of Ecclesiastes. So the Book of Ecclesiastes is written by two people. Well, there are two people in it. There's a teacher, and the teacher says that he is the son of King David, so that would be Solomon. And there's the author, and he is the narrator, the person who writes down this. Now, we don't hear from him really until the end of the book. So I'm going to read now from Ecclesiastes 1. The words of the teacher, son of David, king of Jerusalem, Solomon. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. So older translations, like the King James Version, use the word vanity, but the meaning of this word has changed so much over the years that meaningless is easier for us to understand. However, and I think this is really fascinating, the Jewish word is a word called hevel or hebel. Now, according to Professor Albert Outler, who's an Old Testament scholar, it's translated as merest breath, which he says is a term much closer to the meaning of hevel. Alex Retman chooses something similar. He says mist, vapour, smoke. So what does hevel mean? Well, it's probably easier to give examples of what hell is. An awful example of hevel will be when my friend Joe and his friend Keith were knocked over by a 17-year-old driver whose car went out of control, and they were both killed outright as they were walking along Fenham High Street many years ago. That's hevel. Or when parents do their very best to bring up their children in a loving, caring, supportive family. They do as much as they possibly can for them, and yet their children still turn their backs on them and reject them. That's hevel. Or tragically, as we've seen this year, when COVID kills hundreds of thousands of people in our country and millions in the rest of the world, that's hevel. So, the teacher uses the word hevel because it gives us a picture of what it means. It's unfair, it doesn't make sense, it's senseless, it's mist, and we see it all around us. And that's the word the teacher in Ecclesiastes chooses to use to describe the pointlessness of life as he sees it. He says everything is hevel. He looks for purpose everywhere and he finds it nowhere. We're going to look at some of the things the teacher tries to find meaning in now. So the first one is pleasure. I'm going to read from Ecclesiastes 2, 1 to 11. Pleasures are meaningless. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But also that proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness, and what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself up with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during their few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves and flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves, and I had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone else in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasures of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem as well, the delights of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone else in Jerusalem before me, and in all this my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. Well, the teacher didn't do things by half, and he was in the fortunate position to be able to invest in anything he wanted to. Imagine that. He could do anything, although he says he did let wisdom guide him, and yet at the end of all of his hedonism, he found it meant nothing. It wasn't fulfilling. It was hevel, meaningless smoke. I've been reading a book by the author Bill Bryson. It's called A Home, A Short History of the House. And one of the things he writes about are the houses that were built by the new rich in America at the beginning of the 20th century. They, like the teacher, spared themselves nothing. Their decadence was breathless, and the houses they built were vast and lavish. They had everything you can imagine: art, swimming pools, gadgets, golf courses, villages for servants that supported their lives. They threw parties to rival King Solomon's, I suspect. They were so desperate to enjoy themselves, but pleasure didn't sustain them, so they always went on to the next bigger, newer thing. And then the Wall Street crash of 1929 came, and most of them lost everything they had. You know, today those houses have by and large completely gone. They've either fallen down or they were pulled down, and actually many of them didn't last 30 years. We can live for the weekends or our holidays. You know, I love to go away. I love to see different cultures and try different foods. But holidays come to an end and you have to go back to your ordinary life. Monday always follows Sunday. And the Sunday evening blues can actually take away from the joy of Sunday if we let it. Solomon thinks that he will search for wisdom. And the Bible tells us that Solomon was a very wise man indeed. And he says, yes, he thinks that wisdom is better than foolishness, but then he becomes disheartened because the fate of the wise man and the foolish man, and actually everyone in between, is the same. We all die. So he says, what's the point? What did it gain me? So then he looks at work. Ecclesiastes 2, 10, and then 5 to 12. My heart took delight in my labour, and this was the reward of all my toil. Yet when I surveyed all my hands had done, and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless. A chasing after the wind, nothing was gained under the sun. So I hated life, because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me, and all of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to one who comes after me. So although initially the teacher seems pleased with what he has made, all his hard work leaves him feeling empty. Being devoted to work wasn't enough, because he realised that he would have to hand over everything he'd done to someone else, and that he would have absolutely no control over what they did with it. I had a student a few years ago, an older man who had turned to art in retirement. He wanted so much to be a good painter, because he said that when he died, he wanted to leave something meaningful for him to be remembered by. This man, he kind of wanted an immortality through his painting. I didn't have the heart to say to him that you can go to just about any charity or junk shop and find some very good paintings that have been donated to this shop and often being sold off for just the frame. The artist, already forgotten. Fame is not a guarantee, even if you're good at what you do. And Solomon, for all his fame, still declared it hevel. So, next he looks at money, riches, acquiring treasure, and other material things. He sees that if you love money, the more you have, the more you need, the more you want, and the more you chase it. And actually it's the same with possessions, because they don't satisfy for long. He sees that when you die, it'll go to someone else. We acquire things, houses, nice cars, collections, wealth, beautiful clothes, even beautiful friends. Of course, none of these things in themselves are bad, unless we put our faith in them and expect them to save us and to give us fulfillment. When we do that, everything loses its attraction, and we have to seek out something bigger and better all of the time. We are always looking for the next thing, something at the expense, sometimes at the expense of enjoying what we have. I remember going to see J. John, the evangelist. This is a few years ago now. He was doing a series in Gateshead. I think it was called 10, because there were 10 talks, that is. Anyway, he was talking about wealth in this particular evening, and this is a story that he told. He said, after my father died, I met my uncles. Now, J. John was a Cypriot, and the Cypriots are very attached to houses and money. I know this because I'm partly Cypriot too, and I lived in Cyprus. So, all his uncles wanted to know what he was worth. And he said, they kept asking me, how much did your father leave? How much did he have? Did he leave much? To which J. John eventually replied, leave much? He left everything, because you can't take anything with you when you die. It was a stark reply, but true. Money is something we all need, but it doesn't satisfy us, and when we die, we take nothing. As the teacher of Ecclesiastes would declare, it is smoke. So the teacher is a man who's looking back on his life, and he is full of regret. He sees his youth is gone and can see nothing to look forward to. He pursues wisdom, and although he sees that it's better to be wise than foolish, he also realises that whether you are wise or foolish, you will die, and soon no one will remember you. He realises that the same fate awaits the righteous man and the evil one, the honest person and the thief. No one escapes death. This is all depressing stuff. This is all mist, smoke, hevel. He sees the oppression of the poor and the helpless who have no power and no say, and he sees the injustice of life. And this makes me see how little the world has changed. We still have a world with so many injustices, poverty, homelessness, loneliness, just to name a few. We often feel so small. It's hard to know if we can make a difference to what seems like a bottomless pot of need. The teacher looked and saw this, and once again he declared it hevel. However, in his brighter moments, and he did have them, he gave his verdict on how we should live life. This is what he said, Ecclesiastes 9, 7-10. Go, eat your food with gladness, and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for God has already approved what you do. Always be clothed in white, and always anoint your head with oil. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of this meaningless life that God has given you under the sun, all your meaningless days. For this is your lot in life, and in your toilsome labour under the sun. Whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead, where you're going, there is neither work, nor planning, nor wisdom, nor knowledge. He says, we should enjoy our lives. They are a gift from God. Work, eat, marry, have family, and be happy with our lot. That's really good advice, I think. I think we can live our lives sometimes like they're a booby prize, and we can miss out on the simple pleasure of being alive. We are very privileged. I remember in the Methodist Church, every year there was something called Women's Weekend, I think it was called, and women from different parts of the world would lead worship. They would send over notes for us to follow, and there did sometimes be a film. This particular year, it was being led by a group of women from Tanzania, and they talked about how hard their life was sometimes. Crops failing, lack of clean water, disease, not enough food, poor education. But despite all of their hardships, they gave thanks and rejoiced for the gift of life itself, because it was such a precious gift. Compared to us, these women had so little, and yet they were so much more grateful for what they had. I've always remembered it. We need to be thankful. We need to respond to the gift of life by enjoying it. The teacher also suggests a few things to avoid. He says, don't be a hedonist. Don't be someone who does everything to extreme and excess. Don't be selfish in the way that you live, and don't live only for your own pleasure. Next point, he says, don't be a relationist. Now, a relationist spends their life in gloom. Their thinking is, life has no meaning, there's no point to anything, I'm going to give up and be miserable. And in doing so, they waste their lives. He also says, don't be religious. Don't try to find a formula to live your life by. None of us can make bargains with God. We can't say, if I do this and I do that and I won't do this and this, you will bless me and I will be happy. It doesn't happen like that, and it's no way to live. So, enjoyment of life is a reason for life. But is that it? Enjoy life and die? Surely there's something more than just enjoying it and dying. We all have a deep longing and a deep wish for more, don't we? And where God gives a desire, there is an answer. Life means more than mist. We all feel it. What do we long for? Do we long for a life that can't be snuffed out? Do we long for love that's reciprocated? Each one of us has a longing. We have a germ of eternity in us. In Ecclesiastes 3:11 it says, He made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. We long for God on a deep level, and we know that there's more to life than hevel. We just don't know how to get it. We search for answers in things, occupations, people, special places. And we spend our lives like hamsters on the wheel of disenchantment. All of us have been on this wheel. All of us have been on the disenchantment cycle at some points in our lives. Some of us live on it permanently. These are the stages. 1. You dream about something you really, really want. That special person, the beautiful house, the dream job, the amazing gap year, that wonderful holiday, your retirement in comfort. We achieve our dream. We find that special person. We buy that beautiful house. We get our dream job. Whoa! We have an amazing gap year. We have an amazing holiday. And finally, we retire in style. For a while, we enjoy all of these things. Then bit by bit, we start to realise that's it. As wonderful as the job is, or the holiday was, or that very special person is, they don't fill the God-shaped hole in our lives. And we join with the author of Ecclesiastes in saying it's meaningless. It loses its sparkle, and although some things in our lives are very important, we love that special person very much. Even so, they don't completely satisfy us because they can't fill that God-shaped hole in our lives. Romans 5 verses 6 to 8. You see, just at the right time when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though for a good person someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates his love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. What to do? Well, let's return to the wisdom books. When I started speaking, I talked about 3 people in the wisdom books. Proverbs, Lady Wisdom, Job and Ecclesiastes. But actually there aren't 3 people, there are 4. And the last person in the group is the most important one. He is the wisest of them all, and it's Jesus. Jesus is there. Ecclesiastes rightly says the world doesn't make sense. It's full of inconsistencies and it's unfair. There is an absence of justice in our world. Our world is hell. And then Jesus comes and he makes sense of it all. And we might think that the best way for him to do that is to come into the world and to judge the unrighteousness he sees and to punish those who have done wrong. Get their just desserts, you might say. But in fact, he doesn't do that. What he does is even more nonsensical than hell. Instead of judging the world and us as we deserve, he exchanges himself for us and he says, I'll pay for that. I'll take the cost. John 3, 16, 17. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Now, this is probably not a great analogy, but it came to mind as I was writing this. It's as if we went for a meal in a 3-star Michelin restaurant, the swankiest restaurant you can think of. Now, at the time of writing this, it would have to be a takeaway, but hey. Anyway, we're in this restaurant and we eat all of the meals, we have all the courses, and there are a lot of them, and everyone is delicious. We have the meal accompanied by the very, very finest wine, and it is a different one with every course. We have not 1, but 2 puddings, because they're just so delicious, and it's not every day that you're sitting in a 3-star Michelin restaurant. But when the bill comes, we look at it and we realise we can't pay it. We can't possibly pay it. We can't ever pay it. It's so expensive. We have come to this restaurant and we don't have enough money. In fact, we can't even cover the cost of the bread. We come clean and we tell the waiter, and we offer to do the washing up, the sweeping of the floors forever and ever. We expect, rightly, to be thrown out and possibly to be arrested and fined heavily. The waiter comes back and he has the owner of the restaurant with him. To our amazement, the owner doesn't say what we expect. What he says is, "Don't worry, I'll pay for the meal myself. You don't have to. There is no bill. The debt has been paid in full by me." It's crazy. It's totally unfair, and we are totally undeserving. But we walk out of the restaurant that night with a free meal and our stomachs full, and we have no idea why the owner would do that. Now, I know it's a silly example, and on a much, much more serious note, what Jesus did was very costly indeed. He was willing to let himself be killed on our behalf. He was nailed to a cross, the cruelest of deaths, a punishment the Roman Empire sentenced criminals, thieves, murderers and insurrectionists to. But Jesus was a sinless man who had done nothing wrong, and what he did made no sense. He did this selfless act for us because he loved us so much, and he was willing to take our place and pay for our sin. Jesus came into our hevel and he made sense of it. In doing that, he left us with a choice: to choose life and choose Jesus, to leave our hevel and our meaningless lives and to find our true purpose and meaning. In Jesus, life is worth more than mist, and we can enjoy it with the knowledge that we have a future and life that doesn't end with death but is spent with Christ. The teacher of Ecclesiastes lived before Jesus came came to earth as a man. But I think that if he was about, his advice would be something like this: choose life, choose Jesus, walk with God, be one with Christ, and ditch your idols. Thank you.